Deep in the dark corners of New England, where the forests are mysterious and the roads easy to lose, lived a terrifying woman of whom legend spoke. Her name, if it was ever known, drowned in the streams of time. She was merely a shadow in the mist, a ghost whispered about only by those who dared utter her name. Adam, a writer imbued with a thirst for truth and courage, heard of this enigmatic woman in the tales of local villagers. They warned him, advising him not to tempt fate and not to delve into the past, which was better left forgotten. But for Adam, any mystery was a challenge, and he set out in search of this mysterious figure. The frightening stories did not deter him, but rather fueled his curiosity. Adventures awaited him in the depths of mysterious forests and forgotten villages. But the deeper he ventured into the dark expanses of New England, the more he felt that something sinister lurked beneath the surface. The forests seemed cursed to him, and the nights pierced with voices of the unclean. One day, during his searches, he heard a quiet whisper of the wind, which drew him to an abandoned cabin. The old building seemed deserted and forgotten, but something inside urged him to continue. Stepping inside, he felt the air filled with tension, as if darkness itself pierced his skin. In the depths of the room, he saw a shadow standing in the darkness. "Who are you?" he asked, gripping his old flashlight. The shadow slowly turned, and Adam saw the woman's face, a face that seemed familiar from his darkest nightmares. Her eyes were empty, like windows to an abyss, and he felt something ominous stirring inside him. "I am she, with whom one should not speak," came the woman's voice, as if from the abyss. But Adam was not one to back down from threats. He stepped forward, his heart pounding, but he tried not to show his fear. "Why? Why should one not speak with you?" he asked, his voice trembling, but he tried to hide his fear. The woman approached, and in the darkness he saw her face, distorted by pain and anger. "Because I am death. Whoever speaks to me is doomed to eternal suffering and horror," her voice echoed like a cold wind penetrating through bones. Adam felt fear enveloping him, as silent voices of the past whispered in his ears. But instead of running away, he decided to leave, to the world belonging to the living. He left the cabin, but the shadow of this woman stayed with him, like a ghost, not giving him peace. He felt her pursuing him in every rustle of the forest, in every whisper of the wind. Days turned into nights, nights into nightmares, and Adam realized that his decision was a mistake. He cursed his curiosity, his courage, his pride. But it was already too late. The shadow of this woman became his lifelong companion, his dark side, which he could not defeat. His notebooks filled with horror stories, each line a cry of his soul, but no one could hear him. And so years passed, decades, but the shadow of this woman remained with him, like a curse, like a vow of vengeance. His life turned into a flight, an attempt to escape her, but she always found him, always ambushed him at every turn. Finally, one cold evening, Adam realized that he could no longer live in this shadow, in this nightmare. He wrote his final story, his final farewell, and took his old revolver. He walked out onto an open field, under the dark sky, and for the last time looked at the stars, which seemed so distant. And in that moment, he heard a quiet whisper of the wind, the voice of this woman, telling him that his torment would end. He raised the revolver, aiming it at his heart, and smiled. In that moment, he felt the shadow of this woman releasing him, felt his soul finding peace. And then, as his hand pulled the trigger, a star streaked across the sky, and he heard the quiet laughter of this woman, which mingled with the wind and disappeared into the night. So ended the story of Adam, the writer, the man who dared to speak with the terrifying woman and paid for it with the highest price.